My whole life. My whole life. Even growing up in a ranch, Canoa, between Nogales and Tucson, that's in the district. My mom's and dad's house where I grew up, that's in the district. Went to Liberty, Sunnyside, and uh, and then the house that Mona and I and our kids got raised in is in the district. So, I've been pretty provincial. I haven't left the district.
So I don't live in Arizona's 3rd District. I live just outside of it. The county I live in is in Arizona's 3rd District, and I've been there for about 5 years.
It's a district that good, hardworking people, and families, and it's a young population, a lot of veterans, and it is a cross section of Arizona in a great sense. It's ethnically diverse. It is we have a huge part of the border in Nogales and in San Luis, and over 400 miles, and all those issues impact the environment, extraction policies in terms of mining and other issues impact the environment, and those are all very, very important issues in the district. It's a diverse community. Unfortunately, too much poverty in the district, and and a big need to uplift our educational system, our public school system in the district. I see those continue to be priorities, but yeah, it's a district of hardworking people that aspire to go forward, and a lot of recent immigrants in the district as well. So it's a very diverse microcosm of what I think a lot of the Southwest is like.
It's a large group it was about 65% Hispanic, and so it makes up a large group of that, and that's who lives in Arizona's 3rd District.
I think that we have materially, and this administration, and unfortunately the lack of action on the part of Congresses, many of them, to really deal with needing to reform a broken immigration system, with needing to have something comprehensive, something humane, something that values families, that values young people like the Dreamers, and that applies the laws for refugee and asylum in a fair and honest way. Unfortunately, this administration has made the border, immigrants in general, as central to their campaign strategy for re-election, demonizing a whole group of people, doing an enforcement-only policy along the border, and that is not going to bring us solutions. And the majority of the American people want some solutions. They want this immigration policy and law reformed. It's broken. We can agree on either side that it's broken, and so I see a policy that is comprehensive. I see a policy that talks about security and doesn't shy away from it. I see an infrastructure that builds up our ports of entry, and I see an enforcement policy that deals more with the organized efforts that people smuggling, dope smuggling, gun running from this side to that, and beginning to break those locks that are really the cause of violence and distress along the border. That's what I see, and I see applying our policies in a humane way. That's my vision for the border. That's the border I grew up with, and things have changed, and 9/11 brought the insecurity to this nation, and one of the results was this hardening of a policy along the border. But I think we've reached a point now where we cannot continue to use the border as a political strategy and begin to deal with it as a really important domestic reform that has to be done comprehensively. Otherwise, the divisions that we're seeing now that have been aggravated by Trump are going to get worse.
Well, if you mention that, I think we need to continue building the wall for sure. We're going to need to work on the asylum laws, reforming that. We're going to need to work on laws as far as protecting our citizens from illegal immigration. We also need to work towards something that's big in my run is human trafficking. Arizona, in America alone, it's a $36 billion industry. And so when we look at Arizona's border, 40 to 50% of that comes through Arizona's border. And so that's something I want to focus on. And it's also, I've talked to folks down in San Luis and Somerton, and their concern is the amount of folks who come over from Mexico into the school system, and it's draining their taxpayer dollars. So I want to help them with that also.
We have to rid ourselves of the false misconception that is put out there for those elected officials that don't want to vote for an extension of unemployment. The Senate for almost 4 months, over 4 months now, has had sitting in front of them the HEROES Act that passed the House, and that requires extending unemployment benefits $600 a week for the next 8 or 9 months until this economy begins to get stabilized, until hiring begins again, and unemployment can start to be reduced. And that is supplemental support for housing, rent, food, the basics, and it gets circulated back into our economy. To say that because of unemployment benefits extension that people lose the incentive to work is a lie. Nothing of that occurs. What you need to have now is people on the brink of eviction, no income at all, food insecurity, and it's not just a few people. This is a significant part of the people here in Arizona and of my district. And I think, we have to deal with the issue of saving lives. This pandemic has to be managed and has to be controlled, and we all pray for a vaccine sooner than later. But at the same time, we've seen the economic devastation that's happened in the district and in Arizona and across the country, and that also requires relief. It's not going to solve itself, and I think poverty is increasing in the country, food insecurity is increasing in the country. Those are indicators that we need to put some resources, federal resources, to supplement state resources in order to get this done. And we're not doing that, and that is sad, because a lot of good families, a lot of hardworking families are going to suffer because of it.
Well, there's many actually underemployment programs for Arizona that aren't being utilized. Matter of fact, I had talked with someone. I wish I could give you the foundation, but it's a gentleman here in Tucson who has a foundation who wants to go out to the lower income families who can't get out and go to and get these programs and sign up for them. So, that's something we could do, is the programs that already existed, making sure that the ones in the lower income can have access to that, and they don't right now. So that's something we can work on. Arizona has a huge $1 billion, a lot. I mean, they have it set aside. It's just they don't have the means to get to it. So we need to do something to provide that way.
Healthcare. And this is what I'm talking. It's not short term, but it's a stabilization. Support for cities and counties and towns across Arizona and across the nation to help them stabilize their budget. Revenue has been lost, services has to be cut, and this is the worst time to cut vital public services for the community. It is the worst time to increase our unemployment in the community. So that budget stabilization, where there is no revenue coming into cities, towns, and counties, is an essential part of it. The budget stabilization for public schools, so that whether it is hybrid interactive and in person, that the schools are safe, that parents feel safe sending their schools, that educators and support staff that work in those schools feel safe in there. That is going to cost money. And you can't ask a school district to either lay off people or give up other programs that are valuable to children and to students because they have to put all their money into fighting COVID and making sure that it doesn't create a spread in their schools. So that's the second one. The third one is the economic relief, whether a stimulus check, extended unemployment, moratorium on evictions and foreclosures, but that the property owners, the people that rent, the owners, but they get paid. Not like what's happening now, that yes, there's the moratorium, but there's no pay at the end, so these people are going to get evicted anyway, and when this is over. So That's the other key thing. And dealing with our vulnerable communities, our frontline communities. As we saw through this pandemic, the door that opened showed us that some communities, whether it was the digital divide, whether it was food insecurity, whether it was poverty, that these communities suffered the worst impact in both of an infection rate and mortality rate. They have many, the vast majority being of color and being poor. I think we can't forget that, and we need to concentrate on that. I think we have to fund the public health departments across this country, in Pima County for one, in Santa Cruz, in Yuma, and because they are the front line on a local level to the future, to dealing with these kinds of things. And more importantly, I would listen to science, I would listen to experts, I would listen to public health experts in terms of how we proceed in trying to manage this very insidious and horrible disease that has struck us. But those, I think, are the key pillars for me moving forward.
Well, I mean, we need to take care of the American people right now. They need it. I mean, we've still got small businesses shut down, even within Arizona, that we need to open up. Matter of fact, with, I think it was Philadelphia, a judge came out and said it was unconstitutional. President Trump, I was at the Latinos for Trump rally, not rally, roundtable, and he had mentioned that the same statement as far as the judge saying it's unconstitutional. So we need to be able to help those who aren't having the jobs that because of this COVID and things like that. So I think a good stimulus package for that, if we're going to do it, it needs to go to the people first.
We're approaching 200,000 nationwide, and we will do that before, sometime in October, if not sooner, before the end of the month. And you don't want to say because of this people died, but I think that the response, the lack of preparedness, the minimizing the severity and the threat that COVID was bringing to our nation hurt us. It hurt us in deep ways, economically and in lives. And I think that it was the book that Woodward just wrote, where it was the President of the United States knew about it, but minimized it because he didn't want to create a panic. No, you tell the American people the truth. They need to know. And I think that lack of preparedness, that back and forth, that looking at the virus not through the eyes and the lenses of experts in public health and science and in healthcare, but looking through it, as this administration does, through the lens of political campaign, is what's got us in the mess that we're in, that we're trying to recover from. And politicizing the steps that need to be taken, whether it be a mask, whatever, to keep the spread from happening that CDC and public health departments have told us to do, to minimizing that has caused us more infection and more problems. So I think that that we need to respond with a real aggressive effort. If the Senate doesn't agree to a realistic package, come January, a new Congress and a new administration can attack it with the aggressiveness that we have to attack this issue of the pandemic.
Well, I mean, you say related to New York Times. I think you know that Maricopa came out. They came out and had to redo their numbers because they were doing false numbers. So that's something that we've got to look at. Are these real numbers, especially coming from New York Times or any news? We need to know what the true numbers from CDC says, which CDC again came back and gave us they were giving us false numbers at the beginning, and they're much lower than what they are. Trump has just came out today. Matter of fact, I was on the way here and he was talking about vaccines. So they're pushing vaccines, they're getting those out. If you choose to, my thought about that is it should be up to the person's choice. We don't need to get involved as a government. We just offer it there. The study on the hydroxychloroquine, it's coming out. I know everybody, the news came after it. A lot of folks came after it initially, but there's so much documentation now from doctors who have used it, and it has actually helped cure COVID-19. And so I think we have the means and the tools to do so. We just got to get it to the people. I have a feeling, I remember Governor Ducey had put a stop on using hydroxychloroquine. I would say that he needs to go ahead and allow the state and the doctors to decide whether or not their patients should use it or not.
Black lives do matter, and I think the urgency and the cries for social justice that we've seen across this country not only highlight that and add urgency to it, but what we're dealing here with the systemic issues of racism and neglect and discrimination uh, are, are part of a history that we must turn around. And so, of course, they matter. In terms of the police, you know, I prefer to say that I think we need to redesign our civilian law enforcement in this country. And the security and well-being of neighborhoods and families still has to continue to be a priority. But I don't think we should be asking police officers. And I know a lot of police officers that are from Tucson that went to school here. Their families are from here, and and and, and their discussions with me are about things like I'm not a mental health expert, but I'm called upon to do that. I'm called upon to make a psychiatric evaluation. I'm called upon to mediate in a domestic violence situation. I think that when you redesign the police force with more accountability, more more neighborhood policing and community policing, when you redesign a police force with more accountability and transparency, you also design a police force and fund the efforts to deal with those very important issues that affect our community, whether it be mental health or needs being the primary one. You fund those so you can have experts in those fields be the point as opposed to make it every time a law enforcement issue, which is where many of the situations have occurred in the past. I see it as reform and redesign, and the idea that you would eliminate the security for a community, I don't agree with.
So I'm a prior law enforcement officer. As far as the funding of police, we need to fund them. They've already have less officers. You know, they need more. And so we need to fund the police officers. They bring law and order where there isn't any. As you can see, you know, my opponent, he's for these so-called peaceful protests, but I think it's come out and shown that these protests aren't peaceful. You know what I mean? So as a bodyguard, I was a bodyguard for a company up in Scottsdale, and I had the opportunity to work for a news crew and do protection for them, and I saw Black Lives Matter. Unfortunately, what I saw was a peaceful protest, and then they were set up over here, the peaceful protesters. Black Lives Matter and Antifa was at another location. Then what they did was they came in and disrupted that peaceful protest, acting as if they were peaceful, but then they made it to where they would throw bottles at the police and get the police to respond with tear gas and so on, and which they had no choice. These were bottles with frozen water and things like that, and so those are harmful. That's like getting hit with a brick. And so at that point, what happened was the police had to respond to disperse the unlawful protest, and then at that point you would see the peaceful protesters leave, and what was remaining was Antifa and Black Lives Matter. So as far as Black Lives Matter, I don't support it. I don't support the fact that the Democratic Party is receiving funds from the Black Lives Matter through Act Blue. So if something needs to be done, it needs to be addressed. It's not good. What's happening around our cities, I'm a combat veteran, and it looks like Operation Iraqi Freedom in these cities where they're allowed to do what they need, what they're doing. So with the Black Lives Matter, I do want to clarify one thing. I guess you can say it's the movement. What I'm seeing is not what it initially was meant to be. All right. Do Black Lives Matter? Yes. Do everybody else's lives matter? Yes, they do. It matters. What's going on? You know, as a prior law enforcement officer, I've seen things. As an officer, life matters as a whole in general. Do we need police reform? Yes, but we're going to have to start at a state level in order for that to happen. And it's frustrating to see that for years we haven't had that. If you look at the issues where a lot of these problems are happening, where officers and officer-involved shootings are in the majority of a Democratic Party cities, and so we've got to look at that. Why? What's the prosecutors and what's the DAs doing to fix that? So those are steps to take, but again, that's going to have to be done at a state level more so than on a federal level.
An aberration. I think history will look back on these last 4 years as possibly the worst administration in the history of this country. And they'll see it that way, not because of any economic gain or economic loss. I think it goes to the spirit of our nation. And the most damage that this man has done is to the spirit of this nation. His autocratic tendencies, messing with the post office because it's a campaign strategy, and the delivery of mail, using the Justice Department as personal lawyers as opposed to the lawyer for the nation, and undercutting, I think, the basic institutional tenets of a democracy. That to me is breaking the spirit. And then the division. To divide this country under racial, when we were working so hard, and even now, the urgency to deal with social justice issues in this country, and to divide us along those lines, to divide us in different lines, to make division part of a political agenda, and to appeal to the worst instincts of fear, resentment, and hate on the part of people to get people to vote for him. I think that the spirit of what we want to be as a nation, that's what I think is taking the most damage. And I see Trump as an aberration. I don't see him as part of that. I don't see our nation as basically decent. When we have confronted problems, we have dealt with them as a nation, and we have been without a leader, and we have been without a moral compass for 4 years, and that has to change.
He's our president. He's been our president for the last 4 years, and unfortunately, he's been dealing with a Democratic Congress for the last 4 years who've done nothing but try to impeach him, and this needs to change. He's been shown he's for the people. He's done a lot for the people, and so he needs a Congress that's going to not only work with them, but also hold him accountable. It's not just about that. If there's something that my district is going to ask me to stand up against him on, then I'm going to do that. But at the same time, he can't have someone destroying his administration through just fake impeachment and just all kinds of craziness that they're doing right now. They're not working for the people. The majority of the Congress, Democratic Congress, which it's a majority, are not working with the people, and that's got to stop.
I'm kind of I've been at this for a while, and at electoral politics, I've had the privilege and the good fortune of the people of this district sending me back to Congress and re-electing me, and I'm asking them again. And I think that in the course of my service, I have been right many more times than I have been wrong. And sometimes the fact that I was right caused me a lot of pain. Whether it was opposing the Iraq War, what hardly anybody did, whether it was not voting for the second Obama stimulus package because there was no controls over what was going to happen in the financial institutions, whether it is the cry that climate change is real and is going to hurt all of us, and those things have now become part of the mainstream discussion in politics in this country. So I feel good about that. But I also think that sometimes I think the American people need to be talked to pretty straight right now. They don't need to be scared with conspiracies, frightened with theories that have no basis in reality. They need to be told the truth. And that's where the grievous sin of Trump in not telling people the truth about this pandemic. And the other thing, when we come out of this pandemic, and this is why I want to go back, and why I think I'm the best person for that job, is that when we come back, we are going to rebuild our economy and rebuild the fractures in our society. But that is what the status quo. We can't simply replace what we were doing and put it and say, okay, now it's fixed. Replicating what we were doing is not going to work. It's going to require something much different. It's going to require some investments in the greatest asset we have in this country, which is the American people, in training, education, healthcare, and I think that's how we move forward. So I'm anxious and about being part of it, both in terms of the constituents I serve and lending those issues a national voice as well.
Why me? I'm for the people. I know what the career politicians, their decisions, how they've impacted us. All right, I have been paycheck to paycheck guy. I'm a combat Marine veteran. I'm a prior law enforcement officer. I was a maintenance guy. I did everything, and I had to work in every aspect of life and just barely make ends meet. And know, like things with them passing Obamacare, how I lost great health insurance. I had Blue Cross Blue Shield, PPO. And then Obamacare came around, and their decision to do that, I lost health care. My wife just recently broke her foot, and it cost me $3,000 that I didn't even know it was going to cost me that much, So thanks to Obamacare and their decisions, which Grijalva was a part of, that's affected me. But yet they want to take those, Grijalva's one, he wants to give free health care to illegals. No, the District 3 does not want that. The Hispanic community, who are United States citizens and Americans, do not want that, and I'm here to back them on that. All right, I'm also here to help the farmers in Yuma and Somerton and San Luis. I'm here to help them, keep from them their tax-paying dollars go to other individuals who are not citizens of the United States, and then takes away from their children. So this is what I'm here for. I'm here for economy, to build the business. Since Grijalva's been in, the economy in Tucson has just been, it's gone down and down and continues to go down. I'm not for that. I'm for getting this economy back up and rolling. Tucson needs to be on the map, and they need to show them, it needs to be where everybody looks at Tucson, America says, hey, that's the example of what our economy should look like. And that's what I'm for.
I don't know him that well. I don't know him that well, and it would be wrong of me to either praise something I don't know about. I do know that he has some theories on governance, some theories about society that I find unrealistic, to say the least. But as a person, I don't know him well enough to make that judgment, and I'm not skirting the issue. I don't. He's a stranger to me. But I guess in the course of a campaign, and we end up having debates or doing that, then I would be in a position to answer that question going forward. But at this point, not knowing anything about him and not having any engagement that we should have in terms of the voters seeing us together and exchanging in debates, that hasn't occurred. And until that does, it's kind of hard for me to answer the question.
Mr. Grijalva's been in for 18 years. All right, he's made a lot of choices. Recently, his choices have been poor, with going against the president, going against America, calling these riots peaceful. He's shown that he is not for America, and unfortunately, he's done things. He might have done things. I haven't seen him. Unfortunately, my research has shown he's been involved in workplace violence. He's gotten issues to where he passed a bill to where $600,000 went to Code Pink. And that money went to the insurgents in Iraq, which I had buddies during that time who were killed by insurgents. And so, as far as good, I'm sorry. I call it what it is, and I don't see it right now. Right now, he needs to step up for the people, and he's not.